in Mark chapter 3, we know that James and John, the disciples, were brothers, and Jesus gave them a shared nickname, a Greek nickname, that's Boanerges, which means sons of thunder. Isn't that an awesome nickname? Yeah. I also learned in my research that Sons of Thunder is a very popular rock band. It's also a very popular name for motorcycle groups. And it is also a very popular name for wrestling teams. It's also, get this, Boanerges, it's a word that has come to mean a creature with a very powerful voice. You do not know anyone who could use that nickname on, do you? So, we know John and James were nicknamed Sons of Thunder. Thunder. Pretty noisy, yes? Yes? So I think James and John got nicknamed this by Jesus for a reason. They were probably excellent at making noise. Anybody else good at making noise? Yeah, I know you are. Yeah, stay there. Stay there. Thank you. John and James especially were very loud and proud. We see that in today's gospel. And we see it even one chapter before. You know, they were never taught the disciples to use their inside voice, right? They were always a little too loud. And only one chapter ago, all the disciples were fighting about who's the most important, right? Who's going to be Jesus' bestie? Who's going to be number one? Jesus, at that moment, says to them, it's not important to be important. And he says to them one chapter ago that serving others, stooping down, that's what's most important. But this happens throughout Mark. The disciples are completely clueless. I always think that if back then they had smartphones, right, that probably every time Jesus said something, they would be putting it into their Google account and trying to figure out just what he was saying. Most of the time, the disciples, they just didn't get Jesus. Life is the first gift. Love is the second gift. And understanding, with a capital U, is the third. How many of you have something that looks like this in your house? Anybody have something that looks like this in your house? What do you use it for, Mr. Canal? What do you use something like this for? You hold a plant with it. That's a good use. Is there another use for this you can think of? Mr. Turner?
Eating cereal.
Eating cereal. This would be an awesome goal for eating cereal. Dude, you just made my sermon. And possibly my afternoon with my Cocoa Krispies. Thank you very much. What else could it be used for? Maddox?
Feeding my pets.
Feeding your pets, okay? Yeah, I thought that's a good one. Zach? Can you think of something? Should we come back to you? Okay. Salad! We have the healthy person in the front row. I think I prefer the cereal choice, but...
Putting your candy in.
Putting your candy in it. So is that what you think this is for then? Oh, no. Yeah, the answer is wrong! Yeah, this is what this is for, okay? And I'm not kidding. I bought this in Nepal at the Monkey Temple, and I was thinking, wow, what a cool bowl. That's going to be awesome for cereal or plant. And this Buddhist monk who sold it to me, he's like, Marjorie, that's not what it's for. That teach you this. This finger in Buddhism is your fire finger. The middle finger, interestingly enough, is your bliss finger. So if anybody ever shows you that middle finger, they're gifting you bliss, okay? So you use your middle finger to hold the bowl, and then what you do is you... I tell you, it is so peaceful. Sometimes when things are crazy at church, I just go in and I put the bowl on my head. And everything's better. Everything's better, yeah. So, say your last eyes, Marjorie.